It is my pleasure today to introduce two fabulous speakers who live their lives for saving cats. Danielle Bays is the Senior Analyst for Cat Protection and Policy at the Humane Society of the United States. And Monica Frenden-Tarrant is Maddie's Director of Feline Lifesaving at American Pets Alive. So take it away, ladies.
Thank you for having us at Maddie's Fund. Thank you, Million Cat Challenge. Thank you to the hundreds of people joining. We are always super, super humbled when we can be here with rock stars like Dr. Levy. And I always am humbled when I see the participant number in the hundreds. It's our time for cats. And so I'm so thrilled that you are all here and participating. So Danielle is going to kick us off, and we're going to talk about language that we use that is potentially harmful to cats, and you may not be aware of it. And so hopefully this will be fun. Hopefully it will get you thinking. And after this, you can maybe peruse your own website, your own policies and orgs, and think about whether we are accidentally harming cats in some of the language that we accidentally use. So I will turn it over to Danielle for the first couple slides.
Thank you. I just want to say I am so disappointed that I am not able to play bingo while we do this. So we're going to have a rematch at some point later on. But welcome. Thanks, everyone, for coming. I'm so excited there are so many people here. Monica and I talk a lot about cats, and we wanted to start having this discussion about some of the words we use, because we recognize that, some things that are really common in the language and how we talk about cats is really not that good. And there's some challenges. And we're not perfect. We're all learning this and figuring this out. And we want to have this discussion and bring everyone in so we can figure out what might be some better options, what some challenges are, and kind of feedback from other folks. So, I just want to set the stage of this, is that we've been thinking about this a lot. And that's a lot of it. It's that we're thinking about it. We don't necessarily have all the answers, and we hope that we can all evolve together. And we anticipate having this conversation for a good long time, and it being a process of how we evolve and choose our words. We can go to the next slide and think about how the words we use are really important, especially right now. We seem to be at a really critical point in time about trying to really influence public opinion about cats and cats in our community. So the particular words we use and the stories we tell, that's the narrative. It's going to reflect about what we think about those cats, but also shape what other people think about cats. We want to think about the different audiences and what the words we use might already mean to those audiences, and not just what they mean to us. And obviously there are words there's a correct way to use them and an incorrect way to use them. Word definitions do change. They evolve over time as well. But we don't want to push that and use a word in a way that is not the way that people are going to understand it. So a lot of this is really how we can build that positive culture around cats in our community, and really get people on board with our mission and our programming, and not use words and descriptions of cats that are actually going to be harmful and make our work harder, because our work is hard enough. So the first word, feral. You all knew this was coming, right? Feral. Feral is somehow, feral means like any cat that's outside. It means like any outdoor cat. Like somehow that's a feral cat. Regardless if that cat is super friendly, somehow that's a feral cat. But the word feral really means cats that have, or any animal that has kind of reverted to that wild state. And cats that don't have that relationship with humans, and truly feral animals don't even rely on humans for food. So, when we talk about a feral cat, what image are we giving people? Is that like some wild, scary, is it a mountain lion? Is it like some friendly cat? So we want to think about not using that word so liberally. Community cat kind of rose up as an alternative to this. So when we think about how we describe cats, unsocial is like an adjective, or fractious may be a word, or better yet, just describe what that cat's behavior is. But feral is kind of a catch-all for outdoor cats. Yeah, we want to get rid of that.
Okay. If you thought feral was confusing, we're gonna go a little deeper. What in the bejesus then is a friendly feral? We're confusing people a little bit with this. So if we've kind of set the tone here that a feral is any cat who lives outside. So then we made up, which is incorrect, but then we made up friendly feral, which, as you can see, the two words don't really go together. It's an oxymoron that is confusing the public, and it leaves people to believe that all feral cats can simply become friendly house cats. And as those of you who have tried to socialize a truly feral cat know, that does not always go according to plan. So use instead of friendly feral. Those of you who have taken my apprenticeships before, you've heard me say this a million times, just stop it. We don't need to use the term friendly feral anymore. It's an oxymoron. This is not a thing that really exists. You can't be both friendly and feral. And so you've all heard the quote, my cat was feral. She came in from outside, but she was very sweet and followed me home. She's a friendly feral. We're confusing folks with this kind of language. So hopefully you can start to see where we're going with this and how we've confused the public quite a bit. And it's not helping our mission at all when we confuse the public and we come up with fun little terms like friendly feral. Ready for the next one, Danielle?
Sure.
Hopefully everyone is playing bingo and we've gotten some mark. I'm also jealous that we're not playing bingo, just FYI.
Oh, domestic. This is a real pet peeve of mine, because we see this term used to mean all sorts of different things. We have the domestic cat, which is the Felis catus, that is the species of our house cat. But then we also see domestic to mean something about like tame social cats. There's wild feral cats, and then there are domestic cats, which no, they're all domestic cats. So when we start using this term to kind of create new categories of cats, especially when we do it in laws, oh my Lord, it is really confusing, because what is a domestic cat, then a feral cat is a mean cat, is a wild cat. Again, it goes back to the same of like feral, friendly feral, is it domestic? What are we talking about? And when we talk to different audiences that and maybe come from like a conservation biology field, like they have different interpretations of what these words mean. So we're not even talking about the same thing. So they're all cats. It's all cat. Just call them a cat. Cats.
Just a cat. Okay. This is a good one. We have confused everyone on the word stray cat, the term stray cat. All the time we hear it's either a community cat or a stray cat, and we often believe, or we've changed this term to mean that a stray cat really means a friendly cat, right? If you find a friendly cat outside, a lot of us, especially for intake decisions, assume that cat is lost or stray. When stray actually means stray means it's moved, but it's gone astray, it's lost. But you can have friendly outdoor cats. So just because it's friendly does not mean it's a stray cat. So literally means a cat who's gone astray or is lost, but we like to call all those guys who are in community cat programs who are friendly, that's a stray cat. When in actuality, you can be a community cat and be of any temperament. So if you really are talking about a lost or abandoned cat, we need to use the correct terms. It's a lost or abandoned cat, or use the word stray appropriately. It really is lost or abandoned. It's gone astray from its actual home. But just because it's a friendly cat does not mean it's a stray cat.
Trap, neuter, release. Yeah, no, it really pains me just to even use that term. It's return, trap, neuter, return. I don't know the history of how this all happened and how we have trap, neuter, release versus trap, neuter, return. But we really want to emphasize the return, because that's what it's about. It's about returning the cat to where the cat came from. And this became really important to me when I was having conversations with some anti-trap, neuter, return kind of conservation folks. And they were saying that they would support trap, neuter, release, because to them it meant we're removing the cat, we're releasing the cat somewhere else, like to a shelter. So we have to be very careful about what we mean when we talk about releasing a cat. Like, yes, release, we're going to open the trap and release the cat out of the trap. But what we're really doing is return. So I really want to say trap, neuter, return. I can't, it's even painful for me to see this on the screen here. So
I feel like we should get a prize for having to go through all the words now that are painful to us. Okay, the next one that is painful to me, and I still catch myself saying this one because it is used so often in our industry. And it's funny because as Danielle and I were writing this presentation, I keep hearing myself using these words now, and I want to slap my wrist, tell myself to stop it. So if you are experiencing the same thing, you are not alone. I am still catching myself every now and again saying return to field. I need to stop it. When we say return to field, if you are not in the industry, if you are not familiar with all the jargon that we use, it sounds like we're opening up the car door and just shoving the cat out in a nice meadowland somewhere. We're returning it to field. In actuality, field is an industry term meaning on the ground or away from the office. But we're confusing the public further by saying return to field. They don't know what that means. It's an industry jargon term. So again, we're going to recommend that you use return to home. That makes sense to everybody. Everyone understands the word home, which is why we recommend that we shift everything from return to field, trap and return. They're all return to home programs. And if we unify the language that we use in this way, we're going to stop confusing folks and gaining some traction on and buy-in from the community on how these programs work and why they benefit cats. So I catch myself all the time, and I'm challenging all of you to stop it with return to field and start using return to home. I'm personally not releasing any cats into the Alps of Switzerland here, although that sounds quite lovely, but that is the image that it conjures up.
Yeah, and I think that's really important to remember that we're struggling with these. These are terms that we use. I have a whole book called the Return to Field Handbook, but we have to think about how these terms resonate with other audiences. And that's the same with like habitat. When we talk about where these cats live and their habitat, one of the biggest challenges that we have in community cat work is building those bridges with the conservation community. We all really do want the same thing of, fewer cats outdoors. We don't want them, breeding like crazy. But we need to understand that we can use simple terms that we don't think about, like habitat, where they live. That really is a hot button issue for them. Like my pet peeve, is their pet peeve. Like, so things like habitat. Habitat is not an appropriate term when we're talking about like releasing a cat in my backyard or, behind the shop and sip or whatever your local market is called, So we want to return those cats back home. Again, return to home. This is where the cats live. Return home, not habitat, not field. So you see a pattern here. So it's a part of it is like retraining our brains to say these things.
I can't believe someone got bingo already. To our esteemed moderator, someone has called bingo. So
it's because we're so chatty. We use words.
That's the problem. Danielle and I start talking about cats, and then it's 4 hours later. All right. So the moderators will address bingo while we keep moving on to the next one.
I'm verifying the words right now. I'll let you know when it's real.
Awesome. All right. Here's the next one. This one is problematic on multiple levels, and it's going to be very difficult for some of us to change this because the word colony is deeply entrenched in our work. There are lots of orgs who have colony in the name of their organization. There are thousands of ordinances on the books that use the word colony to describe a group of cats. So a couple big problems with the word colony. For starters, it conjures up the image on the right of our screen here, where it looks like there's just millions and millions of cats living together in giant hordes. And cats do not live like that. It doesn't paint a great picture when we say a colony of cats. The other one is the word colony. We have come to realize as we all try and be better humans and be more diverse and equitable and inclusive, that the word colony is racially insensitive and comes from a colonial background. So it supports the concept of cats as being invasive and non-native. It's racially insensitive, and it conjures up these images like you see here, tons and tons and tons of cats. I have started using group. It's a group of cats, and I catch myself again with this one all the time. I'll say, yeah, I need to go to the group of cats. It's a group of cats. You can certainly use the word clowder if you like. That is the correct term for a group of cats. I personally cannot say the word clowder without laughing in front of a couple hundred people on a presentation. And whenever I type clowder into Google Drive, into a Google document, it wants to change it to chowder. So I've given up on clowder and I just go with a group of cats so that I'm not being racially insensitive, and so that I am not conjuring up these images of billions of cats living behind the market, like Danielle was saying.
That's a hard one. That's a hard one. Hopefully this one's a little easier, and that's invasive species. And this is not necessarily one that we use a lot, but it is very common when we're talking about different species beyond cats. But, you know, this idea that cats are invasive species, it's this whole concept of invasive, alien, exotic, these like animals that are and plants that are coming in and invading. And a lot of the language they use is very militaristic. It's very colonialist. There's a lot of negative connotations that these are bad. And yeah, I mean, cats are not native here, but, you know, humans aren't native either. And we're, you know, the worst at everything. So, you know, let's try to think about, like, instead of parroting terminology that may be used elsewhere in the world to use things like introduced. Yeah, cats are introduced here. It's not necessarily a good or bad, it's just a fact. Or don't say anything. Don't talk about it at all because it's not really relevant. We have enough challenges dealing with things without having to, you know, deal with the alien invasion of cats on our continent with their little tanks and their little helmets.
I mean, I might be for the alien invasion of cats on tanks. I kind of. Anyway, this one is my pet peeve. I get 2 slides on this because this is my big pet peeve. Danielle's got hers. This is mine. Drowning in cats. The way that we talk about cats as an organization, as advocates, as shelter workers and volunteers and advocates has to change. I see this all the time on social media. We're drowning in cats. We're overrun with cats. It's in our press releases. The local Humane Society is drowning in cats. They're urgent. They're desperate. When you talk about cats like this, you are devaluing them to our market. And what is that teaching people? That these cats are like locusts, or like a pox upon your home. You're drowning in them. They sound like a terrible burden. They certainly don't sound desirable. They certainly don't sound like something I want in my home, or that they have value, intrinsic value as an animal, as a species, and are deserving of life and our full efforts when we talk about them like this. The second component to this, which I'll get to on the next screen, is that we're not drowning in cats. As a nation, we actually intake less cats per year annually than we do dogs. We don't often see I'm drowning in dogs posts, sometimes in some shelters, but this is chronic in our industry, drowning in cats, overrun with cats. And if you take one thing away from this, please stop talking about cats like this. We have good intentions, but we're accidentally sending harmful messages. And you can see it in actuality by this little image. And I talk about this image in all my apprenticeships, this pyramid image. And if I catch you doing this on Facebook, I will publicly shame you. I will, because this is my big pet peeve. I hate this. This pyramid that has been around since the dawn of time that says that one cat is going to turn into 12 billion cats by the end of the year. It's not correct. It's statistically not correct. It's grossly incorrect. It's been around for so long that it's been around for so long and it's so wrong that no organization will actually take credit for starting this image that you've all seen. The actual numbers that a pair of cats can make about 95 in 7 years. And I'm not saying that we need 95 more cats on the street, but it ain't 12 million. It's not 400,000. If that were true, you would not be able to walk to your driveway or drive a car. This simply isn't true. We're devaluing cats when we say that they produce like this. It's not true. So it discredits our work and the message that we're sending. But we're also telling people when we post things like this that there are simply so many cats, we have no choice but to kill them. And that is not true. So again, this is my big pet peeve. I will die on this mountain. And if I see this on Facebook, I'm going to take the opportunity to say, this is not correct. And let me tell you why. So not the greatest way to do fundraising appeals for spay neuter. It's just statistically incorrect and sending the entirely wrong message.
Overpopulation. Yeah. So this is along the same lines of, how we describe what the situation is. And increasingly what we're seeing is that it's a population disparity. Across the country, it's not the same. Some areas may have an overpopulation of cats and others may not. It may be seasonal. So the point here is that we really want to be specific about what we're talking about. And be clear, we're not just saying, overpopulation of cats, all the cats, or too many cats everywhere. We want to be discreet in saying, do we even know what a population is? And is that population larger than our capacity? So if you're talking about overpopulation, be very particular, be discreet, and use it more intentionally rather than kind of like, oh, there's all these cats everywhere. Because we want to be thinking more in the terms of having metrics and having data that would support whatever we're saying. When we say overpopulation, it implies that we actually know what the population is, and we know what the population that we would like to have, but we don't. We got to work on that.
And we have Dr. Julie Levy here, who's the world's preeminent feline researcher, and she doesn't even know what the cat population is out there. We're doing our best to estimate it, but no one really knows. So yeah. Okay.
Using terms like capacity, that, things like that. Just being really precise and thoughtful about the words you use.
This next one is a fun one. I think this one is a fun one anyway. And you can go on a deep dive on this. There's lots of research you can do on the internet about this, and lots of really interesting articles. A lot of people have never thought about where the term crazy cat lady came from. And a lot of us use it. We think we're being funny, haha. It's actually one of the oldest sexist, misogynist tropes, and it came from the anti-suffrage movement. It came from these propaganda posters that you see on the right. And I'm a lover of propaganda posters, so I nerd out on this a little bit. But when we use the word crazy cat lady, we're perpetuating this stereotype, this myth that cat owners are all spinsters. We're all bitter, men-hating women. We have a house full of cats. Think about the witch trials that went on in the association of cats with witches. This has been around for a long, long time. This sexist, misogynist trope that in order to have a cat, you must be a woman. Cats are feminine. You can't be a real man and love cats. This contributes to all of that. It's propaganda. It's anti-female rhetoric. And we can do better than that. So as my catchphrase will summarize here, stop it.
We're going to get Monica some sneakers that say, just stop it. Yeah. So really the point that we're trying to get across is to be thoughtful about how these words and phrases and usage, how it affects our work. And you pulled up a couple examples of things that we saw, but that other things that really kind of are pet peeves of mine. And one of them is like establishing a colony. This was a quote I saw in a newspaper of like, all of us are supportive of a policy of trap and neuter. The problem we're having is with the return part, returning and establishing a cat colony of cats on county properties. And this was a quote from, I think years ago in some shelter folks. And this idea that we establish colonies, and you see this a lot in journal articles and newspaper articles, that somehow we're creating these colonies. And then again, that goes back to the idea that we're returning cats home. We're not releasing them into the field. No one wants to really establish colonies unless we're intentionally relocating cats or, for a working cat program, which is such a small percentage of the cats we're talking about. But here it was someone was using this term who was actually in support of trap, neuter, and return. So we need to really be careful of how we use these terms. And again, this I didn't really understand what this meant, that she was abandoned as part of a feral cat colony. Like she was abandoned at a feral cat colony, or cat colonies where people abandon cats, or are you, if you're part of a cat colony, were you abandoned? There's again, are like a whole bunch of words. I mean, this phrase uses three check marks on your bingo card just in this one sentence here, right? I don't even know what this means. So again, thinking about how we use the terms and how people that don't know anything about what we're talking about will interpret those things, because those are the people in the community that we need to get on board with our programs, support for the ways that we're trying to help cats, we're trying to help the community reduce those populations, help the wildlife that's out there by reducing the populations, get people on board for fundraising, volunteers, and things like that. So just know.
Just know.
Yeah.
and
this is the fundraising.
Yep. Think about what kind of message that you want to send in support of Community Cats and the amazing work that we do. And this is part of a larger conversation. As Danielle said, she and I we talk cats all day of every day, and we are still catching different words that we're realizing, wow, we're really confusing people with the terminology that we use. And we are not going to win hearts and minds and bring the public over to this new model of cat sheltering that we're really trying to advocate for if people don't understand what we're doing. And so we need to be really deliberate and unified in our messaging and stop confusing people. And so, like I said, this is just the start of a conversation. There are many, many, many more terms out there. And if you think of some that are confusing or potentially harmful to the cats, Danielle and I would love to hear about them. Email us. One of my students this week was like, I thought of another one as they were perusing their own website, and they said house feral. I'm like, that's another great one. And of course, some of you know what house ferals are. It's just, you have a feral cat and it lives in the house. It's a house feral. I've had them over the years and whatever, but there's a million of these little terms, and we are confusing the public with it, with all of them. And some of them are a little sneakier than others, and some of them are pretty just outright not good. We need to just stop it. But if you have any questions, I know we've got time for Q&A today, and our moderators are going to take over here and give us those questions. But otherwise, if you know of any terms or phrases that might be potentially harmful to cats, Danielle and I are going to keep working on this, and we're going to keep advocating that the language that we use is always helpful to cats and brings people with our mission, doesn't confuse or turn them off.